So my job is to analyze what's going on and tell you what I think should happen or where people should look. And I've done some research onto Taiwan. And what's interesting is that Taiwan does rate quite well for a lot of the issues that people are concerned about for startups, such as the infrastructure, the money, the legal system, and so forth. And we'll certainly get views from some of the panelists here. But in one metric called total entrepreneurship, Taiwan actually rates quite low. And basically that tracks the percentage of people in Taiwan aged 18 to 64, so working age people who have started up or are running a business within the last 42 months, so 3.5 years. And according to the latest survey, about 7.3% of the working population in Taiwan has started a business in the last 42 months. To put that in context, that's actually, it's pretty bad. It's 52 out of 70 countries, so it doesn't actually rate that high. And one of the things that really does pop out, and we'll talk about this later, is fear of failure. But the other one is capability. And it's also not just capability, but perception of capability. So I want to talk to some of the panelists here about that. We know there's great talent in Taiwan, but it may not be tapped the best way. And also a lot of people may not feel they've got the capability to get out there and jump ship from a corporate environment or from academia to start a business. Appia, of course, is a great example of a Taiwan hero that's going from strength to strength. 100 people now, 200 by the end of the year, run by, frankly, a load of geeks, very academic type of geeks, and they've made something of it. So what I'll do is I'll jump in and start the first question off, and I'm going to throw it to Vivian, because I know she's got views of this, and that is, where should the money be going? Where should people be investing? Taiwan, of course, is very hardware heavy, but again, Appia is a great example of you don't have to do hardware. We had Sean on stage as well doing his more software-based approach to building a startups. But I'll ask Vivian first of all, where should the money go? Where should the growth be? Where should we be looking at in the next few years?
I think Taiwan has so much value that we just don't even recognize it. And I spent majority of my life actually growing up in the Silicon Valley. And one of the things that I did when I was turned 17 was I had to leave Silicon Valley because I thought that there was so much out there that the Valley was missing out on. But, also growing up biculturally and spending a lot of time in Taiwan as a kid, everything I love about Taiwan, I get to experience in the physical. But once I leave, I get really, really sad, especially when I go back to Silicon Valley. And I spent a lot of time in LA. So what I've been doing in the last 3 years or so is, even though I work for fun, we are, traditional wireless IT, went to China very early on in 2002 when everything was just opening up. And the wireless fund in China turned into a very opportunistic fund. We did broadband, we did satellite, we went way up the food chain all the way to content. But what was really missing was the value of creativity. And I'm seeing it right now with the kids. I mean, I say kids because I'm rather old, but we have to redefine what technology is because it's everywhere. And I think that when you talk to millennials these days, they have no problem understanding it. It's almost as if the older generation here, especially from the Hsinchu IT, semiconductor, hardware space, is having a more difficult time. And I think that part of our discussion here is to kind of redefine what technology is. And maybe, do you want me to talk about what sectors?
Yeah, I know that food is an area that you think is very interesting.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And food tech. Food is not just agriculture, it's tech,
yeah,
right?
And food tech is not just Uber me this, Uber me that, deliver some groceries here and there. Food tech right now, if you look at what's happening in the Silicon Valley, you have geeks in data with life science people trying to hack the climate change problem through food. And Taiwan is so good at food. I figure Taiwan should be the litmus test for the East, especially for China. But Taiwan has a very good reputation in food. So now the thing is, okay, how do you do it? Well, part of it is sustainability, and that's what's driving some of the growth in the food sector in the valley. You've got Hampton Creek. You've got a whole bunch of companies that we're actually sort of affiliated with through Taipei Startup Stadium, and so we've got meat on the plant side. Taking these are data scientists that are hacking plant protein, looking at the entire food chain, supply chain of food, because we do have a food crisis. What is the next billion people? What are the next billion people going to eat? And so can we make burgers out of plants? Can we make meat out of sausage out of pork, non-pork? Either it's going to be plant-based or it's going to be grown in a petri dish. These are the really interesting things in food, but can you believe it? Food is actually the first biotech. And that is tremendously sexy. We can do it so well in Taiwan. We should be champions of it. Even if we don't have the base IP, let's figure out a way to create new IP, new branding. Media has to go around it because Taiwan has such a good reputation, especially in China too.
So why do you think it's not happening? If it's obvious for Taiwan to do that, it's what Taiwan should be doing. Why isn't Taiwan doing that?
I think it's just communication. We need people to get on planes back and forth. We need to do a lot more cultural exchange, especially with Silicon Valley. And I know that that's kind of the push for the new administration, is to reintegrate internationally. We're going to do it. I mean, I think this circle here knows it, and so we're going to do it.
Well, we did have Taipei Mayor Kirby was in the US just recently to try and help drum up business, right? So there is that exchange, and of course we've got a lot of Taiwan US jiaoliao going on, a lot of communication going on. But I want to move the conversation forward. I want to throw to Tina as well, because I know that you're putting money into tech as well. So at Cherubic, what are the sectors that you think are going to lead the way in the next few years for Taiwan specifically?
So I think for us, Cherubic, we are, obviously very focusing on software internet. And unfortunately, our strong geographically focus is the focus is in China and the US. Taiwan only takes up about 15% of our fund. So I think for us, I'm not sure if software will be one of the strong leading in the industry, leading the way for Taiwan, because it's such a young industry in Taiwan, right? Compared to Silicon Valley or Israel. But really, we're just starting to develop our software talent the past few years. However, I think what Taiwan should do is really play on its strength and play on, use what is already very good at. It could be manufacturing, it could be, agriculture, food, it could be healthcare, biotech. I know everyone it seems like the conversation is always, oh my God, the ship is sinking, what should we do? Howard is not doing well, everything's declining. But I think we should really try to figure out, turn around the conversation and say, hey, we have this advantage, a lot of things that it can only be done in Taiwan and not anywhere else. So how do we, upgrade and transform this industry and to take advantage of that? For example, one of our I think IoT, for example, is an industry that Taiwan can really take advantage of, because Americans, they're very good with software. But then when it comes to hardware, they really don't know what to do with it. And they have to come to Asia, right? And yes, Shenzhen brings scale, but I think Taiwan, it brings quality. So for example, we have one company we invested in, it's called Ring.com. They're a smart doorbell. And they're doing tremendously well. They just received 60 million funding, and they come to Taiwan every month because that's where they do their manufacturing. And they're setting up office here in Xinyichu, with 20 people doing procurement, product design. So I think you really need to attract more and more, this type of new breed of company. They're really good company, but then they're putting part of their R&D center in Taiwan. That's how you keep, kind of help to upgrade the entire industry and to help us just move forward rather than just panic and watch other neighbors try to compete. So I think we should just be more positive.
It's an interesting point you bring up about Taiwan and its hardware strength. And of course, companies are always coming to Taiwan to do their hardware. It's hard to ignore the fact that, as you point out, Shenzhen is such a hub. It's often, sourced or managed out of Taiwan and built in China. It's no secret that most of the world's gadgets are made by Taiwan, but in China. A lot of people forget though that they are made by Taiwanese companies. Foxconn, of course, is the elephant in the room there, but you've got Quanta, you've got Compal, you've got Wistron, and then you've got a very long tail of smaller Taiwanese companies that are doing a lot of innovative work. So I'd like to actually, take that concept and ask Heidi, at KPMG, you guys look at, what the opportunities and challenges are. Is Taiwan going to continue being that window into China as a manufacturing hub? Make in China, but, use Taiwan as the hub. Is there an opportunity or challenges to have that continue further? Is there a pivot that Taiwan should be looking at maybe right now to consider whether it'll continue in that vein?
Okay, hello everyone. This is Heidi Huang from KPMG. I'm a partner of KPMG. I worked for KPMG for 20 years. Before answering the question of team, I want to speak a little bit about my personal experiences because I used to join the rotation program within KPMG from Taipei office to Silicon Valley office back to 10 years ago, 2004 to 2006. However, during the time, Silicon Valley during the time is a very, very booming, prosperous time period. I saw a lot of software giant companies like PeopleSoft, like Apple, like Google. That's the size and scale that I never seen in Taiwan. But there's only 18 months for rotation period. So when I back to Taiwan, I jump into, Taiwan's familiar industry, that's the semiconductor and hardware-based manufacturer, big companies. And what I saw is that everybody think about Taiwan, they automatically think about high talent engineers working for semiconductor and hardware manufacturers. That is core value of Taiwan for decades. But more and more people realize that Taiwan's only solution for now is to gain the ability for innovate. And I think everybody knows that because the hardware companies they cannot selling low-cost devices and gain profit than it was before. The time getting really, really tough. So my observation is that in Taiwan, not only the government but also the enterprises, they know how to encourage the atmosphere of entrepreneur. But the only thing is, how should they do? Not only Foxconn, MediaTek, I know more and more hardware-based companies, they are taking more interested in looking for the potential entrepreneur based in Taiwan. They know that Taiwan young people, they all hold the high talents, but they need encouragement. And I also want to make some address for the government's efforts. I know a lot of people knows whatever governments do, our big companies will say that more of the endeavor was useless. But as far as I know, that in last year the government do some regulation reforms. One of the reform is the company no reform. They set up a new type of company which called closed company. That type of company can basically resolve some issues that the founder faces when they do the fundraising along the process. They partially can resolve, the issues they face when they receive money. They got faced to dilute their voting rights or the power of the company. They partially resolve this kind of issue. And because of this new company law show up, I know as of now, there's more than 60 companies, new set up companies, they're using this new type of formation to set up their company. In addition, for the tax law, the government do some reform too. By the end of last year, they loosen the income tax for individuals especially. Because individuals, when they receive the share-based compensation from the company they worked, in the past, they will get the tax levied immediately when they got the shares. However, under the new tax law, their income will be deferred for 5 years when they do not do any disposal. And also for the tax credit, the tax incentive, the government do something too. Because they really do want to encourage the R&D activities of the companies. So they also, amended the laws to put more flexibility for our tax intensive for the R&D activities. So above all, I do believe that Taiwan's atmosphere here right now will be getting more and more friendly for the new setup companies. And our younger people encouraged, I know that more and more youngers, they are willing to turn to their own heart of voices and to do something new instead of to become a good guy, good boy, good girl. So I really hold some hopes for Taiwan's environment for the future.
But sorry to interrupt. These structural changes in the law, in the legal system, the tax laws, these are important kind of mechanical issues that I think need to be changed. If any improvement in that area is definitely an improvement. But I'm curious to know anyone here on the stage who has an opinion on this. Is that really holding Taiwan back, or is that just kind of minor issues? Because it's easy to say the government's got to change the law, the government's got to have new tax policies and blame it all on the government, and the government has been changing, right? But if you look at global surveys, Taiwan actually ranks okay in terms of the legal structure. It's not the best in the world. It's not a Singapore, for example, but it's certainly not Uganda. And so that's the thing to remember. It's not as bad as you think. It's just that when you're a startup, you always want things easier. You want easy money. You want nice, easy tax systems. You don't want to have to pay tax and so forth. So I'm curious to know, and if I can ask Carman this question, do you think that these changes are great, but these structural changes that the government's making, is it going to change so much? Is that really been the holdback, or has there been something else that's been holding Taiwan back?
Okay. I think actually we are from Hong Kong and we just started in Taiwan, so I may not be able to share too much things about Taiwan itself. But from a global perspective, because we travel around to many countries, we can share some observation what's happening compared to Taiwan. For example, I would like to compare Taiwan with Israel, because both countries you got a very small market, and so when you run a startup from day one, you need to have a global perspective. And both countries, the people need to go through the military training. So what's interesting in Israel, why they become the startup nation, is when they go through 2 years of military training, before they started university, I think 99% of the young people in Israel, they will travel around the world before they start university.
Wow.
And most of them will spend at least half year, 6 months, which is considered to be really minimal. And then more common would be 1 year.
That's really global perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I have met somebody who spent 2 years traveling around the world. So this is something very interesting that maybe that help to bring the young people away from the comfort zone, try to do something new. So I think in Taiwan, what I heard from my friend in Taiwan is people are too comfortable here.
Yep.
and then the parents are to control. So if you
The
are
strawberry generation, right?
and if you are living not in Taipei, maybe 2 hours away from Taipei, if you tell your parent that you want to go to Taipei to work and live there, your parent will be thinking 2 hours is too far away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that may be something.
It's a bit comfortable here, isn't it?
Yeah, too comfortable. And actually, it's also happening in Hong Kong. Yeah. Hong Kong got a similar situation because everybody living in Hong Kong are always in Hong Kong.
Right.
It's not like in China, you live in another city and then you go to Beijing or Shanghai to work. So I think this is something interesting. If you want to have the young generation more innovative, maybe we could bring in more exchange program, whatever.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Who here has spent time in Beijing or ever visited a startup in Beijing? Anyone? Right. I mean, the thing that you notice about Beijing, and I don't want to compare Taiwan to China, but it is a very fast iteration environment there. It iterates very, very quickly because people are very, very, very hungry in China. And not afraid of making mistakes. Taiwanese are somewhat perfectionists. I think that comes from the hardware side. When you put hardware out there, if you've messed it up, you've messed it up. There's no taking it back. Software, of course, you can throw it out there and you just update it the next day, right? You throw it back into the app store and update and iterate, right? And Chinese are not afraid of that. Whereas the Taiwanese mentality is to absolutely get it right. It's that perfectionist mentality, which is what has made Taiwan so strong. But many would feel perhaps is holding it back now. Now, Ed, you guys invest in various companies. We had one of your investment companies up on stage a little bit earlier, an example of a non-hardware company. So tell me about your perspective on that, about the speed, about this perfectionism versus iteration concept, and what do you advise your startups when you're dealing with them or working with them?
Yeah, first of all, the note for food, right? So Vivian said food in Taiwan is really good. So I guess that's an advantage and disadvantage. The food is too good that you're too comfortable, right? So you don't want to leave this place. Yeah, I think in terms of hardware, yeah, there is a cycle issue, right? You have to get the hardware down right, especially if you're doing IoT now, where it's like widespread infrastructural deployments. If you have 100,000 sensors out in the field and they're breaking, then your company's going to go under, right? So I think that degree of quality is very important. But it's also, it's a conversation that has to be sculpted between these tier one manufacturers and these startups, because there's an inherent philosophy built into the people who have been very successful to be incredibly detailed oriented, right? So when you're making an app, a MacBook Pro or making an Apple Watch, it has to be essentially flawless when it comes off the production line. But that, in a lot of ways, actually conflicts with how a startup needs to run, right? And so, at least in our fund, this is something that we try to be very proactive at, is sort of facilitating that conversation between these US startups and the Taiwanese tier one manufacturers.
Are you finding that the founders you're working with are receptive to it? I mean, you're the money guy and you've got the experience, so they're going to listen, but are they doing it? Can they get it in their minds that, you've got to publish or perish, you have to iterate? Are they being able to learn to be less perfectionist and iterate and update and pivot quicker? Or are you still seeing a little bit of that, that hesitancy?
Well, actually, it's the other way around. It's not really the startup founders who are not willing to pivot or iterate quickly. They're on that. It's more of working with the manufacturers and doing a bunch of iterations, right? You can imagine they've locked down a resource of, let's say, 30 guys to work on your project, and then you're just changing specs here and there. It drives them nuts, right? And so oftentimes the startups don't really understand what kind of resources are required to do a lot of the things that the tier one manufacturers can do, right? And so there's a lot of internal costs related to it. And so it's all about a communication, right? Getting on the same page at, okay, at what point of the hardware development process needs to be frozen, and we kind of just move on.
Yeah. Certainly, the development cycle, at some point you just got to, close the gates and get going, right? Now, the other question that I want to move on and talk about is really the startup environment in Taiwan itself. And that is, the entrepreneurial spirit. It kind of gets onto the idea of iteration and moving on so quickly. And it was brought up very quickly just before about the idea of being comfortable. Really, when we talk about Silicon Valley, one of the main motivating factors is what we call FOMO, right? You know, everyone knows what FOMO is, fear of missing out. You get into business and you jump on something because you don't want to miss out on it. It's the hot new thing. And that is such a driver of what the VCs do. They won't always admit it to you, but, you know, any startup, I'm sure the Appia guys have this experience, but anyone who's met with one of the big VCs like a Sequoia or whatever suddenly finds that a whole lot of other VCs want to talk to them, right? Because when the big ones start looking, everybody else wants to be there. Because, you know, you don't want to be the managing partner or the person in the VC who decided not to bet on Facebook, you know? Do you want to be that person? It's like that publisher who decided that the Harry Potter series probably wasn't going to do very well. No one wants to be that person. So it's FOMO. But then on the flip side is something that I call fear of failure, right? FOFA. And so I'm going to introduce you to what I call the Culpan equation of startup delta, which is basically if your FOMO, your fear of missing out, does exceed your fear of failure in an ecosystem or in an economy, you will get more startups because people want to be in it, and the fear of failure that everybody has is just not going to hold you back. But if, on the other hand, the fear of failure is so high that you're worried that you're going to fall flat on your face, you're going to lose money, everyone's going to laugh at you, you're going to be destitute and living on the streets, then you're probably not going to take that risk, right? Because even though you don't want to miss out, you also don't want to fail. And Japan, interestingly enough, I looked at research recently, I wrote a column about it. Japan actually has the second highest FOFA in the world behind Greece. Now, Greece has been a basket case in our economy for the last 10 years, so it's probably not surprising that people are not willing to step out and start up companies. But the Japanese, incredible at technology, right? I think anyone would agree that the technology coming out of Japan, even today, in what is a very slow economy for the last 2 decades, it's still fantastic technology, but they still fear failure, right? They fear about losing face, which is a big thing in Asia. They fear about losing money. They fear of leaving the comfortable bosom of the company they're in to get out there and try it on their own. So this is something that I want to talk about in Taiwan, because I think it's something we don't talk about, and Carman did bring it up. It's the comfort. Are people in Taiwan hungry enough to go out there? Now, obviously, the people in this room are people who are in the startup area, right? So you guys are hungry, and you're not lazy, right? And then if you're in the money, you're chasing those people. So the people in this room are a very biased kind of sample of the population in Taiwan. But, you know, am I being unfair in saying that, you know, maybe the fear of missing out is not strong enough here in Taiwan, the hunger is not strong enough here, or have I maybe got it totally wrong? So, you know, I'll let the people in the room decide. I'll ask Vivian because she's spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley and is coming back, and then I'm going to ask Carman because you've got the Hong Kong perspective, which is a little bit different.
Okay, here's the funny thing about FOMO. I turned into what is called the BAM in the Bay Area.
Tell us about the BAM.
And I had no idea what it meant, but I've got 19-year-old startup CEOs who have nowhere to live. They have moms who were soccer moms, okay? I don't have any kids, but for some reason, I became their Bay Area mom. Okay, that means I can borrow your car if I need to go to Sand Hill Road. I can pick your brain if I need some really good wisdom on hardware, because I come from a hardware background. I also come from a Hollywood background. But also, you know, can I sleep on your couch? I have 3 people right now sleeping in my place, and they're really happy that I'm away. In fact, they want me to be away for as long as I can.
Are you getting shares in their companies? Is that how it works?
Of course not. So you know, I mean, Anita and I have had this talk. You know, it really is FOMO. There is a price to not be in the city. The younger people know it. They don't care if they don't have cars. They don't care if they don't have a credit card. They're out there hustling like crazy right now. And I don't see it here, not because we're too comfortable. Sometimes I think it's because we're not seeing it here, because there's not enough information sharing back and forth. So that's a good example of it.
Come on.
Yeah, I want to share something that I learned from China, not from Hong Kong. We just talk about the parents in Taiwan maybe a little bit scared of risk. What happened in China right now is everybody know that Chinese government got the Internet Plus initiative. So China government is encouraging the traditional business get connected to the internet. And a lot of these traditional business people, maybe they are already very successful. They have a lot of money, but they don't know enough about internet. So what's happening right now is there is a kind of servicing industry happening in China. Some people start to provide training courses to these traditional successful businessmen. And some of the training courses is so expensive. It's like more than 20,000 US dollar per course. 十几万人民币. And then imagine how many students within the room.
Yeah.
A few hundred.
Amazing.
Amazing. I mean, can you imagine they are hungry for learning? And all these traditional businessmen, they're hungry, they're willing to pay so much money to learn what is internet, what is WeChat payment. Yeah, so this is a very big contrast.
Yeah. Now, Ed and Tina, your jobs are to find the startups and put money into them. I know, Tina, you spend time in Japan amongst other places. I'd love to hear perspectives from both of you on this concept of whether or not people are hungry enough here. Are they too comfortable? Is it just simply a fact that there's not enough information flow so people don't actually see what's going on? I'll ask you, Tina, first.
Yeah, I think the truth is you are the product of your environment, right? So if I put someone from Taiwan here, I just put them in Silicon Valley, he's going to become like the hungry guy on your couch tomorrow, right? Because if you cannot recreate that environment, then it's very simple to ease into what is here in Taiwan, which is you have a very chill environment. It's okay if you don't pivot or iterate tomorrow. It's fine. It might be a little bit unfair to compare Taiwan with China and US, which are the two most competitive. They're ultra competitive. You're talking about two markets that has the most talents from everywhere in the world and the most capital. So of course they're gonna be so hungry, and there's no other place gonna be so much hustling going on, right? In China, in Beijing, the normal hour for startup is 996, 996. That means Monday to Saturday, 9 to 9, I'm working in the office, right? And sometimes
They take Sunday off?
maybe
Wow,
sometimes
geez,
they
yeah.
don't. They still go in. Oftentimes we're having lunch on Sunday, and they do say, "Hey, sorry, I have to go back to the office because everyone is in the office." So that's kind of the environment you're facing with in these two places, and you can't just create that in Taiwan. There's simply not enough, or anywhere in maybe Singapore is a little bit, probably not to that extent, but more hustling going on. But very few places in the world are like that, right? In Taiwan, it is very comfortable. There's not the density of startups, and it's not that high, right? And also, there's increased capital, but not to the point where FOMO, fear of missing out, is definitely not here. Although I think it's slowly increasing, we're seeing a lot of international capital VC firm coming in, Mox, a lot of different groups are bringing in, and I think we need a foreigner perspective that come here, and they can probably bring in more energy and faster pace. But it's true that oftentimes you go to the US and a startup, they probably every 3 months, 6 months, something's not working out, they will change topic. But here in Taiwan, you talk to a startup, they're doing this, right, and it's not working out. And in 12 months, you talk to them, they're doing the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's not working out.
Fail fast is a concept that hasn't caught on here yet.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they're just, I don't know if it's just a different kind of mindset. They just don't know how to do it. I think it's because in Taiwan we have a large amount of first-time entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneur, but their company hasn't gotten anywhere. So
Right.
it's like blind leading the blind. So you don't have enough really successful, founders who build company from 0 to 100 million to 1 billion, who know how to do it, right? So you don't have that cycle that can kick off
So
the process.
in that context then of people kind of just wasting time, I know someone who started up a company 3 years ago and it's still got nowhere 3 years later. And I'm like, why are you even bothering, What advice do you give to the founders that you invest in when you talk with them? What is the one piece of advice you have to keep banging them over the head with all the time that helps them change their perspectives?
Well, number one, you try to avoid these kind of founders. you wanted to choose
Don't go near
founder
them.
who, obviously not all founders are like that, right? There's still very good teams who move fast, like up here. A lot of teams here are still very good. The people that we invested are good. So number one, don't choose these type of founders. And number two, if the people you're investing in, they're moving a little bit slower. For us, it's very obvious because we see team in China, in Taiwan, in US. So we immediately can see, who are the better teams, right? So we have to constantly kind of remind them, say, hey, we invest in some teams similar in the US and now they're raising 20 million and what have you got? So you have to constantly throw stuff at their face and say, hey, move your
quicker.
butts.
Move quicker.
So you just, or you try them to, so that I think it's the exposure. You
Right.
need to let them know if this is how you're gonna move, you're not going to make it,
Right.
So you have to create a sense of urgency for them because otherwise they can't
See it themselves.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the point of it's very comfortable in Taiwan. It's a very comfortable place to be. 17 years later, I'm still here. So, and I'm from Melbourne, which is the world's most livable city. So I think it says something about Taipei. And it actually reminds me of one of the complaints that Foxconn's chairman Terry Guo made about the founders here. He's like, people are starting up companies, but they're starting up cafes. And that was a complaint. I personally love it because, there's so many more good cafes in Taipei. But this is, in a way, maybe it's a strength, right? We can talk about it being a challenge, a problem, that Taiwan is so comfortable. It's such an easy lifestyle now. It's no longer a developing economy. It's very much a developed economy. So I'm wondering if there's ways that Taiwan can pivot that into its advantage. Ed, I'll throw that one at you kind of as a curveball. Talk about the issue of, are people too comfortable? Do they have the hunger? And can that be leveraged in some way?
Yeah, today's conversation, Taiwan's very comfortable, etc. Taiwan sounds like Bahamas, from today's conversation.
I'll come on it is.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who would disagree and say, it's actually not that comfortable. The average wages here are pretty
Very
low.
true,
If it weren't because of, the purchasing power here, there would be a lot of very, very serious issues. But I think if, with the Culpan equation, I guess, if the fear of missing out, from what Tina said, is a function of your environment, then the fear of failure could be a function of the supporting environment, right? So the supporting stuff includes the government, includes the ecosystem, etc. If you were to, ask me to go into a singing competition, then I wouldn't have a fear of failure, right? Because it's not something I'm used to, and I have nobody will support me if I go sing. Okay.
Would you like to now? You've got a microphone in your hand.
I'm good. I'm good. So I think the fear of failure will be a function of what you think you're good at, right? And I think that plays into a lot of what everybody has been talking about today. There needs to be this communication. And if you're going to start a company in Taiwan, then finding what Taiwan is good at is actually pretty easy, right? If you look at all the things that we export in Taiwan, these are the things that we're good at, right? Obviously, somebody wants to import them, so we're pretty good at making this stuff. And so when you hear about IoT or the internet or AI and robotics, people often see these as industries, and that's one way to look at it. But you can also see them as tools. Right, and the industries that we look at in Taiwan then could be, our food, agri-tech, textiles, optics, all these things, and these are the industries. And what Carman just said, there are a lot of people in Taiwan, just the same as China, who are from these industries and have no idea how to leverage these skill sets. And this is the advantage of the younger generation, who can then try to make this communication. right? If I'm an entrepreneur that has an understanding of artificial intelligence, how do I pair this with the textiles industry to do something interesting? Or how do I pair agriculture with biotech, right? And make something interesting there. So there's, I think, a great amount of opportunity for people to dive into that. And I think the reason why we're seeing a lot of people drag their feet, I think, is people are trying to jump into industries where Taiwan just isn't competitive, right? And so, of course, you're going to have a fear of failing because you're trying to tread water in a place that is already, you're in the deep end all the time, right? You're competing against the best people in the world. But there are certain things, there's certain industries you can compete in here where you can kick ass very quickly, right? And so I think that's something that we need to be able to do, and that has to do with the communication, right? If we go back to the government, the Taiwanese government spends a good amount of our GDP in research. All right, we funnel a lot of that through the Ministry of Economics. The National Development Council does a lot of great work there. So there's a lot of actually good IP that's available within eTree, within the various research institutes in Taiwan. But there's a gap. I think there's a lack of communication there, even internally within the island. Right, so it's not just Taiwan talking to Silicon Valley or New York, but it's Taiwan talking to Taiwan. Right, we have some really great IP here, but there's a gap, right, between the fresh college grad who has a lot of knowledge in programming, not jumping into the eTree technology transfer office and saying, hey, what do you guys have? And how can we leverage some of the things that the government has already invested millions of dollars in research and take advantage of that and make it into something? Yeah,
it's interesting you bring up eTree. I mean, think about it. A lot of people forget that Taiwan's largest company was born out of eTree. Chaired by a Chinese American who actually is not Taiwanese, even though the company bears the name Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co. So yes, the role of these organizations like eTree and III is being quite incredible, and the IP behind them is something that's fantastic. But I know we're kind of running out of time, so I want to do a quick survey because having looked at the startup environment for the last 3 or 4 years. The first complaint that I get from the founders, those who want to raise money and get going, is that there's just not enough money in Taiwan. So we've got 5 people here on the panel. In your opinion, is there enough money in Taiwan to invest? Raise your hand if you think there is enough money. 2.5 hands, yeah. And the other 2 think maybe there's not enough money in Taiwan to invest. Heidi, what do you think? Is there enough money in Taiwan to invest in startups, or is there a lack of money?
You mean Taiwan's own money?
Yeah, or overseas money, but to invest into Taiwan startups.
Okay, I don't think it's good enough.
There should be more.
Yes, should be more.
Fair enough.
Much more.
My other question is, especially for a couple of you who have money to invest, is there enough good startups to invest in? Put up your hand if you think that there is enough good startups for you to invest in, or do you simply have cash burning a hole in your pocket? Put your hand up if you think there's enough good startups. I feel that Tina's putting her hand up just to be nice and loyal to Taiwan. What do you have something to say, Vivian?
Yeah, I have too much to say. I think we should
Right,
be
10
really
seconds, yeah.
creative about what a startup is right now.
Yeah.
Look at the TMC model. Look at what eTree's done. Look at the stuff that's been born out of spin-outs, workarounds. We've got everything here, quite honestly. It's just that we have to look at it from all angles, look at IP creation as opposed to IP litigation. We've got it.
Yeah. And my final question before I open up to the floor, I think we look in Silicon Valley and even in China, we look at a lot of heroes, right? And heroes are very important to inspire, not just for the founders, but for the VCs. It just gives you that thing. For example, if you look at the Olympics, it comes around every 4 years. And in the 6 to 12 months after the Olympic Games, you suddenly see enrollments at gyms and sporting clubs and people taking classes of various sports skyrocket because they look at the Olympics and they go, I want to get a gold medal, right? And it suddenly inspires them. So, we see gold medal winners in business. So I want to ask each of you in turn, I'll start with Ed at the end. From your perspective, who is the startup hero in your mind? It can't, preferably Taiwanese, it doesn't have to be anywhere in the world, currently alive today. Who is the startup hero in your mind or in the minds of the circle of people that you're in?
Sorry to clarify. This is globally, not just Taiwan.
Anyone in the world, yeah.
It's a difficult one. I think the startup hero, and this is very cliche to say, would be Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of good things and bad things about him, but I think the thing that stands out the most is his companies try to solve problems that are important. And I think that's something that a lot of Taiwanese startups need to think introspectively on. Whatever they're doing with their company, whether that's an important thing.
Right. Tina.
I want to answer your question differently. I think there's two heroes. One, I think Gogoro should be the hero of Taiwan, because when he first came out, people gave him so much crap.
Horace Luke, yep.
It's like so expensive, sucks, like battery, what, you know. But if you think about it, come on, Taiwan stopped to think about, we make something good quality and cheap. We should make something good quality and very expensive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you always
That's
buy
a very good point,
premium
yeah.
product from the US or
Who's
Europe?
ridden a Gogoro? Anyone? Yeah? Or touched one in the store?
I think it's about time that we should make something good and then very premium and sell it to the world. I think Gogoro is doing that. And also at the same time, very innovative, saving energy. So I think that's a role model for all the Taiwanese startups to think outside the box and don't care about what the Xiangming said, right? And I think the other hero is, so I think whenever you gather a group of Taiwanese together to talk about tech, it's always very pessimistic. Oh, we're going down, like China is killing us, Korea is killing us, Japan, but looking at our flaws and very low self-esteem. But when we talk to sometimes foreigners right in Taiwan, and they love Taiwan.
Taiwan, you're awesome.
Like not because of food or night market or girls, but because for example, we invest in a company recently, and they're building the first electric race car in the world and in Taiwan. And the founder, obviously, he's not from Taiwan, he's American. He used to manage a Tesla suppliers relationship in Asia. And he was telling us how Taiwan is the best place to build this because you can get all the components just in a couple hours trip. You don't have to travel to thousands of miles, in the States. Everything is just in like Taipei, Taichung.
So who's the founder? Give us the name.
The name is ZZ Tucker.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So he's here, and he built a team of Taiwanese, and they're building electric cars. So these are the hero of Taiwan, where they're foreigners now because Taiwan just lack conviction of we can do it. But now we need these foreigners to show us the validation of yes, you can do this.
And hopefully one day we'll have a Gogoro versus electric car drag race down the strip of Taipei. We'll look forward to that in a few years. I'll move on because we're running out of time. I would love to hear more from Tina, and I think you all would as well. But I am going to move on. Carmen, who is your tech startup? Or it doesn't have to be tech. Startup hero currently alive today.
Startup hero. I think all the entrepreneur turned to be investor are startup hero.
Can you give me a name?
Because
Anyone come to mind?
They are not. I think all of them, because not only they are investing their money into the ecosystem, they are helping, even donate their own house for the new startup to sleep.
Awesome, fair enough. Heidi, you have a startup hero for us?
Yeah. I because I serve so many hardware companies, there's one name come out from my mind is Mr. Chen Tianzhong. He is the ex-VP of Foxconn, and he, for such a long time after retirement, he stay in the south of China and helping all the startup companies based there to do some hardware combined with software, such of things. So I know that a lot of hardware-based manufacturer companies know this gentleman, but maybe not so famous for the software.
A little bit low-key compared to others, but that's a good name. It's nice to hear new, fresh names. Vivian, you're the last one to answer the question. You may say Vivian Wang if you'd like, but you're pretty humble,
Not
so
at
you
all.
probably won't.
Not at all. Actually, there is one that I really want to point out, and it kind of goes back to sustainability. We've got so much good design talent here. Again, materials. The person I'm talking about is Arthur Huang. and be on the lookout for this guy. He was just honored at the World Economic Forum as one of the most innovative companies. This is the first Taiwanese. Okay, Harvard School of. He's an engineer and an architect. So you've got that Steve Jobs mentality. He's making everything out of trash, and we're not talking about little plastic things. He's taking garbage and making them into beautiful things, materials that you want on your house. And he's going full blast, but he's doing it very much on his own quiet time with a team of multinationals. They're in Taipei, and this is recycling. Yeah. This is closed loop.
If the names that have all popped up, actually, Arthur's the one I have interviewed, so I'm very lucky to hear you bring up that name. I did actually do an article about what they're doing in the recycling area. So we're coming to a close, but to be fair, I'll open up questions to the floor. Don't be shy to ask questions. We've had a great discussion, so who wants to ask something? Yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
Great panel, thank you very much. Not only just for Edward, accelerators. So you must be a strategic investor, but how do you accelerate? And also give us a specific examples. Which accelerating project that you have done have benefited the acceleratee? The process of which and how, and give one example, please. In all the. Well, it doesn't really matter, but whoever has been benefited.
She was looking at Ed, I think, so. Ed, you're the man. We're running out of time, so only one person gets to answer.
Partnership and accelerating, yes.
So I think that with the traditional definition of an accelerator, Mesh Ventures doesn't run accelerating programs, but we've always sort of positioned ourselves in the same way, thinking about how do we leverage our resources to support our startups. And so I guess to give an example, there's a company we invested in several years ago called Will. And so they design and manufacture these really beautiful powered wheelchairs, incredibly ergonomic, and they solve a lot of the perceptual issues with their device. And they were originally going to manufacture this out of Japan. But we had our in-house engineering team work with them over the course of a couple months, and we were able to source everything out of Taiwan. And we were able to take advantage of Taiwan's sheet metal manufacturing skill sets. We redesigned some of their parts so that it can be optimized for production here. And they were able to reduce their costs dramatically by shifting here. And so basically all their units going out worldwide are being made in Taiwan. And so that's something where we are able to use the resources here to quickly accelerate the growth and the manufacturing capabilities of a Silicon Valley startup.
Awesome. Great answer. I like that. Any more questions? We're running out of times, but we do have time. We've always got time for you guys. So no last questions. Oh, yep, we do have one. Great, fantastic. It'll be a quick question, a quick answer. So do you just tell us if there's one specific person you'd like to answer this for us?
Yeah, thank you, panels. I'm actually from the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And then I would like to thank Edward that is actually mentioning about our ministry. That we do have this E3 and Triple I's that are actually helping up our technological environment. And myself, I was actually based in Brazil, and then I came back for about 7 months. And I'm actually here to join this event to just know these startups, and then and finding all this possibility and business opportunities for startups are actually our wish for the ministries. And also, Vivian actually mentioned about this recycling things, and then I just prepared a PowerPoint to show to my boss. She's actually the director of international cooperations. And then I was actually finding that this recycling, that our textile industry is very, very outstanding. And then we've done a lot of functional textiles and the materials, and a lot of these football players from Brazil are actually wearing our textiles, you know. Oh. So then there are a lot of information that we could actually share, and then also I'm sure Tim, you know, maybe we could exchange more ideas, because Taiwanese industry is actually very outstanding, but then hasn't been seen by the world. And then FIFA, I think 2014, there are actually 9 teams of the football players. Their uniforms are actually made in Taiwan, you know. Wow. So there are a lot of stories to share. So,
and I know a lot of Nikes are actually made from recycled plastic from our company, MiniWiz.
Exactly. There's actually some chemical called PTA and EG adding together that it come up to be a polyester. So then I just prepare the PowerPoints and I would like to share with you guys.
Thank
and
you.
then just find it really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what. Sorry, what's your name?
Alfredo.
Alfredo.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone's going to come and chase you later because if you want anything from the government, go to Alfredo. We're going to wrap up now.
Yeah. And also, I would like to thank Anita Huang as well. She's actually doing a great job.
Anita's awesome.
So forming this platform and then generating more business opportunity for the startups in the future. And also Rebecca as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'd be happy to publish your PowerPoint on Silicon Dragon news site.
There are actually a lot of pictures from it.
So
Okay.
that's the end of our session. If you've got more questions, I apologize. We ran out of time. If you want to follow me on Twitter @tculpan, @TCULPAN, come also and swap cards with these guys because they've got a lot of great ideas, as a lot of other people do in the room. And thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much, Tim. Great panel.